Every society that wants to remain civilized has got to persuade its young men to become fathers and providers for families. Otherwise, you have female-headed households, which produce 3/4 of the prison population, and most runaways, most dope addicts, most of the real losers come from female-headed households.
In the last 30 years, when the problem of fatherlessness has gotten acute, we have had a deterioration in the situation of children. More and more crime, more and more drug use, more and more out-of-wedlock pregnancies and the like. And so, presuming that the absence of fathers increases, you would get more and more of those things.
When fathers are with children, among the ways that children do better than they are when they're with mothers is they're much more likely to be healthy. They're much more likely to go to bed on time. They're much more likely to, if they're a girl, to not have unwanted pregnancies. They're much more likely, if they're a girl, to not have pregnancies before wedlock. They're much more likely to not commit suicide. They're not to commit homicide. They're much more likely to achieve in every academic area, math, science, reading. They're much more likely to, they're much less likely if they're brought up by their dads to end up in hospitals, to have nervous breakdowns, to have mental problems. They're much less, and many of these studies are also controlled for socioeconomic variables, and that's extremely important.
You think you know who the fathers are?
Yes.
Of the 2 stories we've done already?
Yes.
Go ahead, tell me which one you think.
I believe in
Over
the
here.
first story, I believe the baby's his.
The current
current husband.
Yes.
Yes, the
Right.
baby looks just like him.
Right, and over here?
And the baby, the little girl, looks exactly like him.
Which one?
The current husband.
Really?
Yes. The little girl looks exactly like him. It looks exactly like him. Well, to me, it looks exactly like him.
I'm going to come back to you a little later on, see what happens.
When I would get through on the phone in the evening, I would hear my ex-wife saying, "Rachel, Kirk is on the phone." And, you know, that would just, I mean, I'm the type of person I'd let it go for a while, so finally I asked Rachel, and I have a hard time confronting a 6-year-old on these issues, but I tried to be as constructive as possible. I said, "Rachel," I said, "did your mommy call me Kirk?" "Yes." I said, "Why?" And she said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Do you call someone else Daddy?" She says, "Uh-huh." I said, "Who do you call Daddy?" And that guy that Mommy's seeing right now,
I've never really had to discipline my daughter. My daughter behaves very, very well with me, and there's a noticeable difference when she comes to my house from her mother's house. But she has to kind of readjust and settle down a little bit, and I can see the difference in attitude with my daughter when she's at her mother's house when I pick her up.
When my 6-year-old is with us, during the summer I get her 2 weeks at a time, and we've been able to potty train her at night. And this was early on, you know, so she stays dry at night. Well, my ex-wife keeps her in diapers at night, and the reasons that she has given me is that she's too busy, she's too tired at night to go through a training process.
We're talking about a 6-and-a-half-year-old child who has literally been trained that it's okay to go to the bathroom in her pants at night because her mother will not follow through and train her. Over here, we don't have that problem with her.
The research was already beginning to show that children that were deprived of their fathers were turning out terribly. And this was in the mid-70s. We had this research available at that time. And so I was pointing out this type of research to the women. And much to my chagrin, a lot of the women were responding from a woman's rights perspective as opposed to what benefits the children's perspective. And this began to make me very disillusioned with the women's movement, and people that I thought of as pioneers, like Gloria Steinem, were no longer seeming like pioneers, because to me, a pioneer was somebody who was a creative thinker, not an opportunist. And so that saddened me a great deal.
The male role is the weak link in the family. The human male is an interloper in the area of reproduction. Society doesn't have to provide children with mothers. Biology does that. But society has got to provide them with fathers. And our society is kicking fathers out of 60% of their homes. And judges figure, well, obviously the mother's bond with the infant is closer. Therefore, if she wants out, why, we'll have to throw the husband out. The judge should think the opposite, which is that if a structure is threatened, a family structure, and it's desired to preserve that structure, and families do produce better children, higher achieving, better motivated, better behaved, then society has got to strengthen the weak link in the family, which is the role of the father.
Judge Jean Johnson, this woman, when I was in the court and my first wife Ellen was testifying, you know, basically against me, this judge gave me the most scornful look that I've ever had in my life by somebody in authority. And you know, and I felt it really made me feel scared, inferior, because I knew this lady had all the power in her hand to do what she wanted with my life, and here she was. She had, I don't know if she hated me or she just resented me for something. She believed everything Ellen told her about me, is what she did, and she held it against me, and she made her decisions based on that.
I have to, you know, go into court, and I feel like a criminal, and I mean really, literally, and very seriously. I feel like a criminal, and I see all the fathers in court there, and they're, and the mother, for some unexplained reason, is represented by the district attorney, even though, and I was the plaintiff and she was the defendant in this case. She nevertheless gets free representation, and if I want representation, I have to hire an attorney, unless, of course, I go pro per, which, you know, I generally do, because that's the issue here. If I had to hire an attorney for a couple $1,000 or so, which I do not have, that's what they usually raise child support by.
So the fathers are very preoccupied with the fact that their children are being taken away, and they're automatically going to consider those people that were responsible for taking their children away. They're going to consider those people as an enemy, and it creates a lot of animosity in the system. And it also forces the government, when you take the children away from the father, it forces the government to handle the situation. If they would give custody of the children to the fathers, then the government would be out of the loop, because the fathers would take care of the children. And they're much better at doing that financially, and psychologically. They can raise the children with a sense of independence, and much more so than women, because women tend to breed dependency, not independency. That's the function of the male and the female psyche.
It turns out that there are very different styles of parenting that men and women typically bring. Not all men and not all women manifest this, but in the typical household, the mother tends to be the nurturing person, and the father tends to be the one who is somewhat more interested in competition and independence and things of that kind. So when you stop to think about it, you're talking about kind of two sides of life. Everybody needs, on the one hand, to have a firm base of someone who is unequivocally loving and so on, and that's what the mother brings. And also everybody needs, however, to kind of break away from that at times and go out on their own and take risks, take a few challenges, and that's what the father brings.
I can't say that fathers are better for children than mothers. I can't say that, but I can say that given all the circumstances, when you have to make a choice between the two, you're better off choosing the father, because that generally reduces the incidence of divorce, because a lot of divorces are motivated by the fact that the women get the children, they get the money, they get everything, and the father gets nothing. And that's the motivating factor that we have to eliminate. So if you take all of those motivating factors out, you end up with a situation where the primary group that files for most divorces are filed by the women. So if you eliminate the motivating factors, you reduce a lot of the divorces.
3/4 of divorces are initiated by women, and they know that it's just a matter of filing papers, and the judge will say that no fault has to be shown, and so the man is almost automatically deprived of his children, his home in many cases, or most cases, and his future salary, so that he is made to subsidize the destruction of his own family retroactively. And women know that they're entitled to do this. The woman goes to her lawyer and says, "I'm thinking about getting a divorce, what can you tell me?" And the lawyer says, "Well, you will get custody of the children and probably occupancy of the house. And you can expect support payments and maybe alimony if your husband is well-to-do. But why should a man get married under such circumstances when everything is stacked against him?"
My situation, since I've been remarried for 5 years now, me and my wife have already filed bankruptcy. We're barely hanging on every month to month, paying the bills. My 2 kids that are living with their mother, of course, they're on AFDC, on welfare, or worse. If they're still in Mexico, they don't even have that down there, so it's poverty. So it's just lowering all of our living standards down, just lowering everything that we work so hard for, just knocking it down a couple of notches.
If we're going to have children growing up in 2-parent families, society has got to support the male role. Feminists complain, in fact all women complain, it's a man's world. It's got to be. The woman's world is the ghetto. In the ghetto, the female heads the reproductive unit, and the results are not good. Here's a quotation from a young mother of twins in the Washington ghetto. This is from Leon Dash's book on the Washington ghetto. The pregnancy brought out feelings of possession on the part of the father of her twins, feelings that both frightened and angered Charmaine. The man had begun to act as if he had marriage papers on me. I wouldn't stand still for it. I told him to get his ass out of my house. So he gets his ass out of his house, or her house, and he goes to maybe rap with some other young black males on the street corner, and he's probably headed for the underclass. There's not much to do with a young man except to make him the head of a family. When he is the head of a family, he settles down. He becomes responsible. He earns twice as much money. He gets sick fewer times. He has fewer accidents. He acquires stabilizing possessions, a home, insurance policies, a portfolio of stocks, and so on. And society has got to encourage this. But now, with a 60% divorce rate, we are discouraging men from this responsible lifestyle, which will permit children to grow up with 2 parents. And this results in the ghetto pattern of female sexual irresponsibility and male work irresponsibility.
I was engaged to a young woman. She apparently went to a fertility doctor without my consent or knowledge, obtained a drug called Clomid, and then apparently got in bed with me and gave birth to twins. I thought that there were laws and legislation dealing with these issues, but I found out that later on that there were not. I furthermore found out that fathers ostensibly had no rights. Custody was out of the question. they're more interested in getting money from me and maintaining this woman on the welfare system and giving her grants for school than actually giving the children a stable home and a stable lifestyle.
Dear Abby and Ann Landers tell us about every other month, there is no such thing as an illegitimate child. That means there is no such thing as a legitimate child. That means there is no such thing as an unchaste woman, and there is no such thing as meaningful fatherhood.
We're seeing in the American African community as today, from 1932 to 1957, black students led all other students in academic standing in the city of Los Angeles. We are including wealthy whites, we are including the Asian population, we are including the Latino population. Los Angeles has always been a multicultural area. It has never been any different. And yet, how could it be, in the middle of segregation, these young black students led everybody else? We're talking about Ralph Bunche here, we're talking about Jackie Robinson, we're talking about Tom Bradley, and yes, the Johnny Cochran and people of this nature rising up during this period of time. How is this possible? I discussed this issue with many of the people in my neighborhood. What I found out was interesting. More than 90% of those homes were being father-ran. Even when the father did not live with the mother, if the child was born illegitimately, the father still was involved in the child's life and ran the household, and you still had to respect him. We have found from 1967 to the present time that motherhood and mothers have been placed in charge of the American African household in Los Angeles. To wit, today the black child's academic standard is below everyone in the state. It is the lowest in the state. There can only be one reason for this. And one reason alone is that the father has been extricated from the home. His discipline, his direction is no longer there. And therefore there is no reason for the child to achieve or to even be ambitious, because it's accustomed to seeing someone get something for nothing. This is exactly what has to be stopped.
When children are brought up by dads, their IQ tends to increase. When children are brought up by moms, that does not tend to be the case. Now, I believe that, and again, many people have wondered why that is the case. I believe that the reason that that is true is because when fathers are much more likely to encourage risk-taking, mothers are much more likely to encourage protection. When you encourage risk-taking, you're forcing the mind to do things, to expand, to venture into places it hasn't ventured before.
There are a lot of studies coming out that show that the father's close contact with the infant could be very important. Math skills, all these things. Who knows how many of them will ultimately prove to be true? But I do think it is important that this data get out, that there is evidence that close contact between father and infant may have long-lasting benefits to the infant.
You have generations upon generations upon generations now of young men and women who have no concept at all of work, no concept of academic achievement, no sense of self-control, and you're placing these people on our streets every single day.
Births to teenagers, poor teenagers and so on, especially black inner city teenagers, and the problem is that these young girls have nothing going for them. They see no future. There are no men around that they would want to marry. They have been programmed by Charles Darwin, let us say, to have a child, and in every other part of the world, in developing countries, when you get to puberty, you have a child. That's what you're about. So it's nothing unnatural. It's a little more unnatural in the sense of requires a higher level, cultural level or something to postpone the act until you're fully able to take care of it. But so these young girls have a baby, and then that gives them something that they can take care of and feel responsible for, and gives them a kind of purpose in life. So that's the situation there. The problem is that the children born under those circumstances have a bleak future. They're not going to have enough money. They're in permanent welfare. They're going to maybe be dependent on other relatives. The woman's going to have to work, and on and on.
I turned to John A. Robinson, professor of law at the University of Texas at Austin. He, quote, said in the Southern California Law Review in 1986, this is the first generation of women to have complete control of fertility. Complete control, and are willing to use any means available to achieve pregnancy. Anybody that has complete control over anything must also have complete responsibility for their behavior. So therefore, how can you blame someone else for the actions of another? Which means that our laws, as they have been set forth, are skewed, are grossly unfair, and therefore when we start talking about unwed pregnancy, we're not talking about someone having an accident, but we're talking about deliberate acts. If a woman does not take the actions necessary to prevent a child, then she intends to have one. The fact that she receives sperm from somebody is immaterial, because at the very least, she can kill the child within 3 months, or she can wait till the last second and have a partial abortion. Now the government is telling us that she has the right to create by any means necessary, and she has the right to kill by any means necessary.
A black woman says this: when all the men that you know are dope addicts or dope peddlers, then being a single mother makes pretty good sense. Let's turn that around and look at it from the point of view of black men. When all the black women that you know are single mothers, then being a dope addict or a dope peddler makes pretty good sense.
My lifestyle is hostile, trying to make it through life with a false smile. I can't take it, I'm trying to hold it. Massacring my face in the Glock toting. So where is heaven? I'm trying to find it. The enemy's near and they right behind me. They got explosives, so what's the motive? Will I acquire my riches before it's all over? It's either kill or be killed, that's the game plan. The scriptures they read turn your cheek on the same man. Angry, afraid, got my mind flying. So where in the days, got my gauge popping. We all dropping, it ain't stopping. Shells in the barrel, my finger popping. Don't worry, mama, don't worry, daddy. I'm in a hurry, got a cemetery waiting to get a nigga buried. The vodka, the gin, and the juice. The coke in my nose got my mind loose. The sweat from my body got me smelling liquor. And if you cross me tonight, all praise the gin, I'ma fix you. The vital points of my nerves started clucking. The coke in my nose saying fuck them. And if it's a woman, I'ma take her up to my crib, make her take off her clothes, then shake her and rape her. Dispose of the body before I'm sober. Thanks for the fun, cut her throat and it's all over. Searching for acid, keep my cells breathing. Azar is my name, cause I despise Steven. Both swarming, another morning she died before dawning. Don't worry, mama, don't worry, daddy. I'm in a hurry, got a cemetery waiting to get a nigga buried. I hear a baby teething, a baby breathing. Ice picks to the lungs and now the baby's leaving. I had to lift him, I couldn't resist him. Mama's crying like hell about her baby cause she miss him. I lit me a match and poured some rum on him. His father walked in my house, I draw my gun on him. I popped the shell, I heard him yell. Two birds with the same stone, they drop and fail. I fed the scene, somewhere in Queens, sparked a Newport 100 cause I was feeling for nicotine. They say I'm gonna die cause I'm hopeless. We all got a grave, so I'm staying focused. Don't worry, mama, don't worry, daddy. I'm in a hurry, got a cemetery waiting to get a nigga buried.
Boom, boom, bring that here, bring that here. Boom, this shirt should be $100, but these people here are arguing me down for $5. Boom, here you go, come on, sister. Boom, for you. $5, $5, $5. $5
Look at the back, $5 right here, $5. $5 on the shirt, y'all.
All of us are coming together as black women, knowing that we got power.
I believe I know the Father.
What?
I believe I know the Father.
Is it the guy?
I cannot say it on the TV.
No, we don't want his name.
No.
All right. You'll tell us after the show.
Tell the girl, and I would tell you all.
Several years ago, I was mugged at a Versateller, and after that, I gained a lot of weight. My health declined rapidly, and my wife decided it was time to leave. So she fabricated some police reports and abducted our child and went to a shelter for 6 months. I was prosecuted for spousal abuse. I was not convicted. I was diverted under duress, and subsequently lost all parental rights. To this day, 3 years later, I still have no parental rights. I'm merely a visitor to my daughter, who's now 6 and gets to see me 10% of the time.
My ex moved out of the house, let it run down, stopped making the payments. It went to the bank. They bought it back from the bank, $220,000 in cash, after she and her father claimed that they were poor and destitute, and then made the false allegations. So I went to jail twice. Went through a long criminal trial. I was acquitted of all charges. They took my boys away. My oldest boy, I didn't see him for a whole year, and then had to have monitored visitation for about 6 months. My youngest boy, I didn't see him for 6 months, and then had to have monitored visitation for 6 months. The courts are refusing to let me have any overnight visitation with my son. They're refusing to give me any kind of regular visitation other than just a Wednesday afternoon and a Saturday afternoon is all I get. And I'm happy that I get to see them at least twice a week, because a lot of guys don't get to see their kids at all. So I'm pretty lucky when it comes to that.
All over the United States, in every state, men and women are having the same issues in family law as we are right here today. I mean, I have to admit to you, my situation compared to some of these other parents is nothing. I mean, my heart goes out every time I hear another story of a dad or a mom not able to see their kids because the other parent has taken off. I mean, I'm lucky because my daughter is 15 minutes away, and I do get to see her. And I'm complaining because I don't get to see her enough, you know, and I don't get a call every night. But I think it's the same emotion that I have as these other folks have. I am lucky that I get to see my daughter. It saddens me that my older daughter won't come see me.
And it saddens me that you have to feel lucky that you even get to see your daughter.
Yeah. I mean, what's wrong with that picture?
When fathers have custody, it is much more likely that the fathers will allow access to the mothers than it will for the mothers to allow access to the fathers. The children with fathers are much more likely to like their mothers and respect their mothers than children with mothers are likely to respect their fathers and like their fathers. Fathers do not seem to poison children toward the mothers nearly to the degree that mothers poison children toward fathers.
We're trying to get out there and spread the word that this is the way it is, because we believe that the general public has no idea how family court works, what the results and ramifications of family court decisions are, because you wouldn't recognize what really happens relative to what is printed in the media.
How did I begin the Purple Heart House? A year ago, in 1996, in June, I was invited to speak at a COPS meeting in Orange County, because for a year and a half I had my house painted black with big letters saying, "Dear Judge, how about fairness for fathers and rights for children?" And so they had noticed that, and they thought anybody who was that outrageous and daring, they could paint their house and speak to the judge. They wanted to hear me speak. So they said, well, because I had painted my house beige again, because the judge thought perhaps if I painted it beige, it would be better for me. So I, after 17 months of having it painted black, I painted it beige, and it was beautiful again. So anyhow, the people said, well, you painted your house black, what would you be willing to do next? And they said, we thought perhaps we would like to pass out purple ribbons, and maybe you could paint your house purple. And I said, well, let me think about that. So I did some research in cancer. The AIDS people have chosen the red ribbons. Cancer has chosen the purple ribbons. So I had a dream that night that for each day my child was missing from my life, I would paint a purple heart on my house. And so that's how it started. So I came home immediately and painted like 100 hearts in my house, because I hadn't seen them in about 100 days. Now it's up to 395 days. And as you can see, there's a lot of hearts in my house. Why can't I see my child? I'm up against a family that has $20 million and political connections. I used to help them pay off Michael Wu, Joel Wax, and Ferraro. They used to give me $3,000 to give to these politicians for their campaigns in exchange for favors for the Gene Autry Museum, which is what my ex-mother-in-law is connected with, and Gene Autry. So I thought nothing of it. I said, well, and so I would give them this $3,000 in cash every once in a while. I'm still getting mail from some of these politicians asking for more money. But it's payback time, and and when my ex-wife and my son moved out of my house, she had a bodyguard with her and 2 movers from the Gene Autry Museum. And at the very beginning, my ex-wife had tagged everything that I had ever owned in my house. Everything was tagged from 10 years before I had met her. The things that she had never even had anything to do with purchasing. So I said, how can you take all this? And she said, because I can. And so I called 911, and 2 policemen came, and they're very polite. And they took her aside and took me aside, and they said, well, Mrs. Robin, can't you leave something for Mr. Robin? And so she said, okay, I'll leave him some things. So after seeing this, the bodyguard and the 2 movers hired by her mother took me aside and said, Mr. Robin, you're in a lot of trouble, because your mother-in-law has so much power. She can pick up the phone and see to it that you never see your son again. And I laughed, because I got a great sense of humor. And here I am, almost 4 years later, and they were right. She had the power to pick up the phone and see that I never see my son again. It sounds like a soap opera, but it's the truth. They have that much power. And no matter what evidence I had of that she was a child abuser or a vicious person, the judges would say, I don't want you to badmouth your ex-wife anymore, Mr. Robin. Don't badmouth your wife. I say, Your Honor, here's the evidence that she hurt my child. He said, do you hear me? You don't get it. Don't badmouth your... So this is how I got treated in court. And so that's what I'm up against, and that's why I haven't seen my son, who wanted to be with me for all this time.
Men can no longer depend on having families. Now, that's a very serious thing for a young man of marriageable age to confront. You want to have a family, but you can't have a family. This depends on the whim of your wife. Marcia Clark divorced Gordon Clark because she didn't find him sufficiently interesting intellectually. Well, she knew what his intellect was like when she married him. Feminists like to talk about girls not wanting to live the kind of life their mothers led. What will Gordon Clark's sons think? Will they want to lead the kind of life their father led? A short marriage, a divorce.
That's what everybody'd like me to do. Just keep doing what I'm supposed to do, falling like a tin soldier, and then hand down all of this payment to my kids and say, guys, boy, you're men now. This is what you can come to expect if your relationship goes bad, okay? You can see your kids like I've seen you guys on weekends, every other weekend, and we can go to Disneyland, and gee, we can have, and I can be a real father to you, because that's what a father is, a Disneyland dad, okay? We come on the weekends and we have fun. That's what a real father is. I said, how can I really be a father to you guys? How can I do it when all I see you is on weekends? Is this a good example of a father? Well, the courts say what's in the best interest of the kids. Well, the kids are telling me, Dad, wait a minute. That isn't what a dad is. We can't even get them involved in baseball because baseball requires games on weekends, okay? How am I supposed to go from wherever I am to wherever she is to get the kids to their soccer games or to anything else, okay, provided, you know, you're have the means to do all this? You can't be a father. Am I going to do their homework with them? I'm a professor. I have been for 10 years. They give full school authority to the mother. Doesn't even have a degree. Okay? I've been a professor for 10 years. They give her total authority in their schooling. Figure that out. They've been in 4 different schools in 2 different years. 5 different residences in 2 different years. Does the court care? No, the court doesn't care. The court goes like this. We see what we want to see, okay? And we see this, okay? The kids are saying, nobody cares. Who cares, Dad? What can't you? I said, guys, look, at this point, you've got to do it. You've got to help me out here. Okay, what are you going to do, guys? Are you going to accept this? Is this what you would accept when your sons are small and they're taken from you and this is what you're given? Is this what you're going to accept? What is Mom doing to the young boys by removing them from their fathers when these boys grow up? She's perpetuating it. Is she doing them a favor? It's total disservice. Total disservice.
Here I have maybe 60 pictures from all over the world. This one's from Australia, a lot of from Canada, one from Norway, and most of the rest of them from the United States, a few from Los Angeles. But the story is exactly the same in every single case. And what's happening to the United States of America and the world is that we are in the mess we are right now because of the fact that we have nothing but fatherless homes. I mean, people don't realize this. When you get divorced, you lose your children, then you lose your property, and you lose your business, and you lose everything. And this should not be happening. And because of that, the world is absolutely upside down. I mean, there's more crime and more violence and more hatefulness in the world because there's not a father in the home to take care of these things. I mean, most of these fathers you see on the wall here were the caregivers. They were the gentle, kind, loving persons. These are the people who said their prayers with their kids every night before they put them to bed. And when the kids were unhappy or sad, they came to their father for love. I'll just read a couple of these to you. Here's one from Valdosta, Georgia. Here are my beloved children, Robert, age 5, and Rachel, age 8. I haven't seen them since Christmas. I was always their caregiver, and my children need me very much. The South Carolina court system and lawyers robbed my children of their father. God bless my children and let them know how much I love them very much. Here's a kid from Canada. I haven't seen my dad since June 1996 and I miss him very much. The court says I can be with my dad, but Mom won't let me. My dad is my best friend.
The lack of importance that's attributed to fatherhood by our family court system is disgraceful. I think that all of us know in our hearts, or at least most of us, that children need strong models, role models from both genders and both their parents, and that children cannot and won't fully develop unless they have strong influence from both parents.
You can get orders for access, but they don't have to be obeyed. You can't tell me what's the penalty for denial of access. There is no set thing saying, oh, you will go to jail. I mean, the books say, the Family Law Act says that access will go, so the custody will go to the parent that's more likely to facilitate access to the other parent, but it's rarely followed. I mean, there are women we know of in our group that have denied access 100 times, and the judge is only to fine the woman $1 for that kind of behavior. So it's sanctioned by the courts and by society, If you tell people, I tell people all the time, my wife doesn't let me see the child, and the first thing they'll say, well, you're paying your support. And any father who isn't paying support deservedly should not be seeing his child. They don't see access as the right to the child to know the parent. You know, I don't know what I'd say to my daughter when she's 20 years old and say, why don't you know your daddy, who he is? Oh, well, he didn't pay support or this. You know, I don't think she'd like to use that as something, you know, I didn't get to know my dad because he was out of money or he had no funds. It's really not a, they say the two are separate. But you can be denied your access if you don't pay your support. But you can't refuse to pay support if you're denied your access. So they are related, but only negatively for the father.
One of the top law professors here in Canada, who annotates all the law books on family law, he stated in this one case that I was reading that the state is going to enforce the child support because if they don't, they have to pay it out in mother's allowance or welfare. Says, but the state's not going to enforce access because it doesn't cost the state any money. Well, that's completely false. And it costs the state huge amounts of money. I don't work anymore. I used to pay 15 grand a year in income tax. I don't pay any income tax anymore. I have no intention of ever paying any income tax until it changes. I'll work under the table. I know hundreds, literally hundreds of guys that have just quit working. They're living at home, doing odd jobs, working under the table. Basically, they've dropped out of society. There's guys that don't produce. Instead of producing at a rate of maybe $50,000 or $60,000 a year, they produce at $20,000 a year because they have absolutely no incentive to go out and do it. There's guys that are missing work on a regular basis. They get home from work on Friday and start drinking because they can't see their kids, and they drink right through and miss their shift on Monday. It happens. I mean, it's not right, but that's the reality of the matter. And it's going to continue, and the problem just keeps snowballing because every day more and more fathers are being taken out of their kids' lives, and for absolutely no good reason.
President Clinton very heavily emphasizes how bad these deadbeat dads are for not financing the destruction of their own family. I want to tell ex-husbands that they ought not to pay child support. Now, I don't want to urge them to defy the court order and get in trouble and go to prison and be made examples, but there are tens of millions of these men, and if they knew the power of their numbers and got mad and agitated for the abolition of alimony and child support payments, they would have to be listened to. And then, of course, if alimony and child support were not going to be squeezed out of them, that would greatly undercut the case for mother custody and strengthen the case for father custody. Why should a man support an ex-wife? This is slavery. This is performing forced labor for another person. And the only justification is that she has already kidnapped his children and deprived him of the children and maybe the home. What services does she perform that entitle her to a share of his income, which impoverishes him and makes him less marriageable?
Both parents have to be able to parent their children, regardless of whether the parents break up or not. And I think it is eventually going to come to that. I think it's coming reasonably quick. It'll get there a lot quicker if guys just say enough is enough and keep going back to court and just tying the system right up, because if we don't, society is going to lose. The children, the next generation, and the generation after that are going to be lost.
There's a school of thought out there, and it's also the training, because all the social workers are the same school of thought. Hey, look her up when she's 18, 20. If you really loved her, you wouldn't put her through this trauma anymore. Walk away. So there's a school of thought that thinks if you're a real man and a true loving dad and not selfish, you won't fight. the good fight, because it's not a good fight, it's only hurting her more. Walk away. So there are men who believe in the best interest of the child to do nothing.
Never give up. There's one thing that I tell everybody that I talk to: never give up. I mean, there's times when I've seriously considered giving up because it just hurt too much. Well, you can't. Your children, doesn't matter what your ex is doing to you, your children still love you, you still love your children. Never give up on them. It's not your child's fault that your ex has got a bee in her bonnet. Always, always, always. Try anything. If something doesn't work, try something else. If that doesn't work, try something else.
It's been very devastating. Nothing in my life ever prepared me for losing my daughter. I've been suicidal. I've been just so. I'm no longer employed. I don't think I'm employable. My concentration is gone. The slightest thing like a commercial on TV can set me off. If I see a Bell telephone, long distance thing about a child reuniting with a father or something like that, it can set me off. So I become very emotional over this, and I see it in other people. I had 4 men call me on Christmas Eve in tears because they couldn't be with their children. I don't know why they call me. I haven't seen my daughter in 3 years. This beautiful little girl. This is one of the last photographs I ever had of her. And she's 6 now. She was 3 then. And I can't really help them. If they think that I have some magic cure or something to tell them, I don't. And it doesn't seem to get easier for me. I've never had a Christmas with her. And in fact, I thought that would have been my ace in the hole at court to say to the judge, you know, Your Honor, I had never had Christmas with my little girl. And my ex's lawyer jumped up and said, Your Honor, there's no precedent for giving him Christmas. He's never had Christmas with a child. So what I thought was my strongest argument was apparently his best argument. I've never had Christmas with my child. Why give it to him now? So I've never had any of the holidays with my little girl.
For children, especially, and we can talk more about this, that for children, especially in the modern world, the family is all they have. There's nothing else. They used to have villages and extended families and brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts, and so now they just have this fragile little couple of parents that bring them into the world, and if anything happens to them, their life is shattered.
From where I sit, from my experiences as an adult child of divorce, it comes as no surprise to me that kids today are so messed up in this respect, that they are violent. You know, that gangster rap appeals to them. Like the professor says, the garbage generation. You know, I was the first wave. You know, this generation is about the 6th wave. Well, you know, so they've built on all the work that my generation and every generation before them did of garbage. You know, you don't clean up the garbage. Well, I'd suggest that we got 30 years of garbage that's doing a lot more than festering. It's going around creating rampant disease. I do what I do today for fathers because I saw the benefits for my own children.
An activist day is never done. Starts with a good helping of evaporated milk, a nice sprayer, a brush, and the most important ingredient, the sticker. Here we are in the honeymoon capital of the world, Niagara Falls. What better place to recruit men for the divorce movement, eh? Anyways, let me put this all together for you.
They split up when I was 14, and by the time I was 14, I was already into drugs. I was already into drinking, and, you know, any other vice you had going. I mean, I was an altar boy. I was stealing from the poor box in order to do my habits. I was taking jugs of milk from the store and keeping the money that Mom was giving me in order to, you know, typical juvenile delinquency, teenage stuff. But it progressed. Why? Because by the time I was 10, I was ashamed of my family, because my family, I mean, I'm watching this fighting going on all the time. I'm thinking, oh my God, I hope my friends never find out. That damaged my self-esteem to the point of, like, I had absolutely no confidence, okay? it got to a point where I didn't even care. I was in so much pain, all I wanted to do was anesthetize myself.
I was just recently in Germany, and this was published July 7th, 1997. Scheidung brutal means brutal divorce. Der Rosenkrieg ums Geld. The War of the Roses over money. And then there's some subtext here. The devilish tricks your partner and ex-partner will play upon each other. Why the truth becomes more and more expensive, and how you can separate cost effectively. This is in Germany. I was quite surprised that the divorce rate in Germany was gaining between 35 to 40%. That's unheard of. I mean, most Germans would stick it out until the kids were at least grown. Not anymore.
When I got my first joint, when someone rolled that first doobie for me and I took my first hit and got high, it was the first time I had felt good since I was a little boy. Okay? Like no stress. Is it any wonder that I didn't enjoy the experience? Say, well, geez, I think I'll do this a little bit more often so I don't feel all this crap that's going on. Well, unfortunately, one thing leads to another. Okay, you know, I'm not here to say that because you smoke a joint that means that you're going to become a heroin addict. I don't think that drugs necessarily work like that. And I had an extensive history with drugs as a teenager, to the point I cracked up. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, 5 times I almost died, overdosed from PCP. This is back in the 70s, angel dust, when it first hit the streets. This is what can happen to your children, okay? One thing leads to another. Life happens in the smallest little moments. Is this what any rational parent would want to happen to their child? No. But it's something that I can trace going back to my parents' relationship and inevitable divorce and the way that they dealt with it. I had difficulties with my father as a child because of the way my mother defined him.
The future, if things continue the way they are, that fathers are less and less involved in family post-divorce, the future's bleak. As I stated before, young boys growing up in fatherless homes have no role models and seek out anybody who's got money, and those are usually the people that are on the wrong side of the law. Likewise for young girls. Their father is really the first man that they ever learn to love as a man. A young girl's sexuality is defined by the relationship that she has with her father. And if it's a good relationship.
You know, this is the thing about being an activist, is that you got to be pragmatic about these things. In order to get people into the loop, you got to be able to go out and let them know that you're there. If you don't do this kind of stuff, how can the movement ever grow?
So as a feminist, I'd like to see equality in the true sense of the word. But in the court system, it's not there. I hold all the cards. And that's got to change. Otherwise, we're no better than the men that we were criticizing and continue to criticize today. And if that's what feminism is, I don't want any part of it.
Make no mistake, divorce is more work than marriage. It's till death do you part when you got kids, literally. Most people, though, will take the line of least resistance. Well, what's the line of least resistance? Oh, well, I'm going through a divorce. I guess I need a lawyer. Lawyer says, okay, well, I need $5,000.
Now, my understanding is that milk is like crazy glue. You need a sandblaster to get that off. Right? I do this in courts. I go to the court steps, you know, right at the beginning where you got interrupt, you know, you're looking at the step, and right there you see divorce for men. That's what I do in Toronto. Last month I got over 440 calls. You ask anybody who's spent $5,000 on a lawyer, you know, you can almost sit there and look at your watch. You know, let him go out to have lunch, and he'll be back after lunchtime and say, I need another $5,000, right? So finally you're 30 grand in the hole. On average, the guys that I work with, you know, some of them have spent like $200,000. The other side has spent $200,000 also. So you see over there, right over there, those brown buildings over there. United States, I'm coming to your town. Your kids do stand half a chance if they really care enough about themselves and really care enough to try and figure out what the heck happened to them. You know, by the time they're about 35, 36, 37, they'll come out the other end of the looking glass and they might be okay. Might be.
What a huge waste of time, though. Like Danny, it took me, I had 5 years of happiness as a child. 5 years. And then it was just black. It was sadness, depression. I looked at some of my report cards from grade 1 on, and there were always these comments that I was an unhappy, depressed child. And I'm a very outgoing, sociable person. And somehow that got arrested for a great deal of time. And I suffered as a child because I missed my dad. But I really admired you as a father, because I didn't have one. So, here I get teary-eyed again. I missed my dad. I'm 42 and I still miss him. Doesn't that tell you something about the effect of fatherlessness and how that affected me to this day? I still feel this way. So when you think about the fact that, oh well, it's just a divorce, the kids they'll be fine. They won't be. It's a scar that takes forever to heal. So think about it. Think about looking down first. Take a look at what's going on with your kids. Before you start worrying about how you're feeling, look at them.
This is for all the Christopher Robins out there.
It's much too quiet to be Father's Day. Church bells ring out as flowers are laid. Brother and sister in silence they pray. Wake up, Papa, happy Father's Day. Wake up, Daddy, it's Father's Day. We miss you, Papa, happy Father's Day.
We'll try to do this. thing if I can. I don't know. Okay. No, I can't do it. How about getting John down to read it? He's tougher than I am.
Tell me why you can't read it.
Scant. Anyhow.
It's not my choice that we're apart. I fought real hard right from the start. But these past few years have been unkind, and I have nearly lost my mind. To think that I should lose the right to revel in your sheer delight, or ever think a mother could rob me of my fatherhood. And the pain I felt you'll never know, because I could not watch you grow. When you fell and scraped your knee, you did not cry or run to me. When you laughed or won a race, I did not see your smiling face. And when you called out in the night because you had an awful fright, it wasn't me that came to you. It wasn't me that helped you through. But if love can travel through the air, then know, my darling, I was there. And I'll be with you as best I can, but after all, I'm just a man. And though we live apart in space, I always keep a special place within my heart to call your home. And in our love, we're not alone. So call your daddy on the phone. I love you, dog.
It's much too quiet to be Father's Day.
If you're married to the lady, she says she's faithful, you're bringing up babies, they're your kids. Whose kids would they be? Is somebody else changing their diapers? Is somebody else taking them to school? Is somebody else taking care of them?
What about this other boyfriend that she had when we were younger? Maybe.
What business is that of yours?
Now the problem is, in modern times with the age of promiscuity and the sex revolution, that guys aren't so sure, and you know, it's not a big step to the conclusion that this may be one of the reasons why fathering is in decline. That you know, the guys, well, maybe it's not my child anyway, and also an awful lot of marital violence and child abuse and so on is seemingly related to this issue, that the father is maybe unconsciously concerned that the child is not his. Child abuse, by the way, is much more common with stepfathers, where the person is not related. A biological father is much less likely to abuse. And then the fathers are very concerned that, you know, from an evolutionary psychology point of view, the worst possible the worst possible fate that can befall a man, from an evolutionary perspective, is if he spends his entire life raising someone else's children, because he then has done the work of someone else and left with no genetic contribution.
If you look at the statistics, even the media reports, you will note the people that are beating, abusing, and molesting children are almost always not fathers. They are boyfriends and stepfathers are the people who are doing this, that don't have a direct interest necessarily in those children.
Child abuse, a disproportionate amount of child abuse is committed by mothers, even in two-parent families. That's a dirty little secret that feminists don't want you to know. But the amount of child abuse increases enormously in a single-parent family.
For instance, in my case, when my first wife made the allegation that I sexually molested our daughter that was 3 years old, well, what she didn't know when she made the allegation was that whoever sexually molested our daughter gave her venereal disease. And that would have been very easy to prove that I didn't do it, because I don't have venereal disease. So they could have taken a blood test, eliminated me, asked her or said, well, you made a false allegation here, and charged her with a crime. And I think in cases like that, it should be done. I think somebody should be held accountable. I mean, whenever an allegation is made, somebody should be held accountable, either the person for making the allegation or the person that the allegation was made against.
The National Justice Committee was established to document cases of false accusations, false convictions, and to essentially find the cause of these and remedies for them. As part of doing that, we have tried to acquire as much information about these false accusations and convictions as we can. We think we're probably the largest data bank of cases in the country. My guess is probably 25% of those people who are in prison on child sexual molest cases may be innocent. I think women tend to be believed because they're mothers. And what is more sacred in America than motherhood and apple pie? The flag. I mean, it's just, the general public, up until very recently, hasn't wanted to believe that a mother would intentionally lie about such a thing. We feel that the reason why there are so many false convictions and so many bad results in family court is because attorneys don't know what they're doing. And so we feel very, very strongly that if you are accused, that you need to go immediately to the right source, and you need to go to an attorney who really knows how to defend these cases. And probably the best source of immediate information is actually on the internet, and getting in touch with either fathers groups or accused groups and finding out who in your area really knows what they're doing. Because if you don't, if you end up going to the yellow pages, you are likely to never see your children again, and you are almost as likely to see the inside of a jail cell. And I want my son to receive the same treatment as my daughter. And I don't want him to live in a world in which feminism, the gender feminism that I see today is continuing to rage. I don't feel that legislation where we can go through 43 bills were passed on domestic violence, which were all geared against men. Domestic violence is almost equally prevalent, if not equally prevalent, female against male. And yet, because men are much less likely to make the accusation, it's men who suffer from it.
We've got a lot of cases here in Southern California and Los Angeles where the women are using the domestic violence key to alienate the court from the fathers, increase the child support orders, get custody, and all of that's a circle. It all comes together. And it's also being used in some cases politically against political opponents. We've got a case here in Southern California where someone that was running for mayor suddenly was accused of sexually abusing a couple of girls on the block, and the allegations were false. But still, it's something that's being used constantly. And the domestic violence issue is taking on some very ridiculous tones. And in one case, one of the cities here in Los Angeles passed out a flyer that indicated and described domestic violence under various circumstances, saying that domestic violence could include raising your voice or yelling at someone, and it could also include the silent treatment. So if you come home from work, basically you're a father, you come home from work and you're tired, and you walk in the door and your ex-wife or your wife at the time is yelling and screaming at you because you didn't empty the trash or whatever it happens to be. If you yell back in defense, then you're being accused of domestic violence. If you shut down and say nothing because you're tired or whatever it happens to be, you're also accused of domestic violence. So no matter what you do under these circumstances, they've got men put in a position where just being alive, they're going to be subject to domestic abuse allegations. And the government has a lot of funding behind all of that. The therapists and things are getting money for providing treatment to these people that are claiming that they're a victim of domestic violence. And it's another example where the government bureaucracy has gotten involved and created motivations for making the allegations, and just as they do with the divorce.
Well, having gone through the court system, which is extremely adversarial, I was quite upset and agitated and didn't know how to make sense of what was going on. And in meeting with some social scientists and reading some books and looking at the global picture, pieces started to fall in together, and I discovered that it's a planned movement. It's a trend towards eliminating fathers from families totally, by taking the kids first away from the fathers, and then after the mothers are off the AFDC dole, taking them away from them and having them being raised by the state, perfect little cookie cutter kids. Makes 1984 look like Disneyland. They won't know what freedom is. Our freedom has been so eroded and taken away, it's like wormwood. It's a mere sham of what it formerly was. And so the government and certain corporate entities, in order to preserve the monetary situation in California, it's a $96 billion a year industry, 500 million nationwide. The business of divorce keeps these attorneys and corporations well-heeled in money while the rest of the country is scrambling to make a living. If you take away a man's livelihood and his home and his job, he's not very viable as a mate, and therefore will have less children. The women will be forced to leave the home and go to work. The kids will wind up in either daycare centers or government-run institutions, and that's part of the plan. It's insidious.
Then once the divorce spiral gets going, all sorts of other things come into play. You have an entire battery of divorce therapists. You have an army of divorce lawyers. There's tremendous profit now in this whole business of counseling and legal advice and so on to divorcing couples. And then the case is often made that with divorce, there's a curious sense in which sort of the capitalist system benefits, at least in the short run, because that means you have to set up a new household, and then you got to buy a whole lot of new consumer products. So that keeps that moving along at a fast pace. And of course, in the long run, capitalism probably gets knocked out in this whole process, since the future workers are being so neglected, namely the children, that in the end run there's going to be a day of reckoning.
Men don't really see, even though you tell them, that their lifestyle, their very life substance is at stake. They see their problem as an individual problem. They do what they can do about it, and then they're through. There's no cohesiveness. There's no real group movement. And that's the problem with men. They don't stick together like women do. Women will gather together. They'll exchange information. They'll march. They'll do anything in great numbers. And the men are too individualistic. They will not do it. And that is our problem. And that may be our downfall.
I've always said that the first phase of a men's movement will be a father's movement. And a father's movement will be to men what equal pay for equal work was to women. And the reason that that's the case is because every movement that begins with with four things being true: a large number of people being emotionally rejected and economically hurt at a period in history where they can afford change, where there's enough economic luxury to be able to deal with significant change.
And if you read the Declaration of Independence, the second paragraph tells you that when a government becomes too oppressive, it is your obligation and your duty to correct it. Okay? And the Second Amendment tells you that in order to maintain a free country, that the rights of the people to have a militia and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now you put the two of those together, and what you have is a statement from our founding fathers that if the government becomes too oppressive, it's our duty to change it, and obviously with the militia. I'd hate to see that happen. I really would, but that's where it's heading.
What this is doing to the families, the children, the fathers in society
is really, it's an engine of devolution. It is devolving this nation. And I believe it's devolving this nation for an ulterior purpose. Can we prove this? Yes. The facts and figures are that matriarchy is a total failure. Feminism is the greatest national disaster this nation has ever faced, period. This cannot go on. If anyone were doing any type of intrinsic models on a system, and they had this system to develop, they'd never develop it because it can't sustain itself. It's sailing a ship, drilling holes in the bottom of the hull, and drilling bigger ones. And God forbid if you're the captain and want to plug up the holes, no, they want you to get more pumps and while they're putting more holes in it. That type of system is going to sink the ship. And that's what this thing is doing. With families, it's an engine for people to be immoral, and it is developing the highest divorce rate in the history of civilization. It has created a new class of people, of privileged people, called the single female-headed household. And if you look at the attendant facts and figures of what that is developing, as far as illegitimacy, as far as childhood crime, high school dropout rates, teenage pregnancies, teenage suicides, drug use, gang use, gun use, across the board, that home is there in the single female-headed household. As a matter of fact, the best thing you can do with a child would be to put it with a single male-headed household. Those figures across the board are extrapolated and explode with the best success rates, best SATs, best education, best performance, least amount of crime, etc., etc., etc.
Most fatherless children do not become educational failures, but most educational failures are fatherless children. Most rapists are fatherless children, even though most fatherless children are not rapists. Most gang members are fatherless children, although most fatherless children do not become gang members. Most child molesters and abusers are fatherless children, even though most fatherless children do not become child molesters and abusers. Most unwed parents are fatherless children, even though most fatherless children don't become unwed parents. Society has got to be based on the general case. In the general case, a fatherless children is far more likely to be a troublemaker.
Fathers and mothers, men and women, really are unique in what they bring to a child, and that somehow in the order of things these unique attributes are important. Now, of course, in the absence of a father, sometimes boys and girls can get those traits from another male around, from a grandfather, from a brother. Typically in some cultures, the mother's brother is a very important figure, but the father's the one who's the most likely to be concerned about raising these kids and concerned that the kids are going to be a success. And so not having that guy obviously is not a fatal flaw. Otherwise, all people growing up in single-parent families would become a cropper. That's obviously not what happens. In fact, most don't. Goodness sakes, our president grew up in a single-parent family without a father.
Republicans have been notching up questions about your moral authority. How important is moral authority to you as you deal with questions like tobacco and drugs? What effect do you think this whole wave of controversies has had on your moral authority, and what kind of moral authority do you think the Republican critics have?
I believe that it's very important for the president to be able to stand up for the values of the American people collectively, and for communities, and for families, and for individuals. And I think this administration has a good record, and I believe I have a good record of standing up for the things that will help us to raise our children stronger and keep our families stronger and make our country stronger.
I would like to ask everyone who works for this administration in any department of the federal government or who has an appointment in any way to please stand, including the White House. Thank you.
Bill Clinton on November the 8th went to speak to a group of homosexual activists, the big conference that they had. It's the first time in history that a sitting president has given the dignity of his office to that purpose. You didn't hear a peep of protest from anyone in the Republican Party.
My private life is my private life, and it is. But my sexuality is as much a part of me as my skin color. And
how did you meet Ellen?
Oh, I saw Ellen across a crowded room. Not knowing anything at all except how I just was drawn to her. I was not gay before I met her. I never thought about it. I never...
That confuses me.
You know what? Nobody could have been more confused than me, but it was very clear from the second I saw her that this was something more powerful than anything I could have controlled.
Had you been dating men up until this time?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, oh, yeah. 95, you said you slept with? Yeah, 95.
Really?
Yeah. So I went on the chandelier, swung across to her, and bounced down in front of her and said, come on.
Your producers wanted Oprah because she represents middle America, and if Oprah were on the show, then middle America would accept gay.
She wouldn't have done it just because she represents and people respect
that slant.
I respect her too, and that's why I wanted her to play the therapist. And I think that was you who said, you know, we weren't doing it because she was a great actress.
2 days after that conference, on November the 10th, when the president at the White House called for a revamping of the curricula of all the schools in the country to teach pro-homosexual concepts to children. Somebody should have opposed that. Somebody should have spoken out and said this is not right.
Where does Clinton come off stating that education is below par? See, they make it sound good. That's the thing. They make it sound like this is great. A friend of mine once told me that his father told him that a good, sharp con man can send you to hell and make you look forward to the journey, okay? And that's what's happening. See, Clinton gets up there and he says, oh, well, we want 18 children in each classroom, and we want standards set, and we want this and that because America should have a great educational system. And it all sounds great. But when you look at what's really happening behind the scenes that people are not aware of, is that they are going to also dictate to the local governments the curriculum that these kids are going to have. Now, you see, every police state, like in Germany and in Italy, the first thing they did was capture the youth. They all had youth organizations, and they brainwashed the youth, okay, because they grow up to be the population. This is what's going on now. When they get to dictate the curriculum, they can change history, they can do anything they want, they can propagandize, they can set up what you're going to learn and what you're not going to learn, instead of up to the local people, and that's dangerous. That's one way that they're gathering power unto Washington.
When we get back to the Wizard of Oz, is that they don't want you to look behind the curtain. They don't want you to look at the truth. And God forbid, the worst thing that can happen to the system is that a man actually take his child and succeed. Because what you've done with that one act is you've collapsed a superstructure, a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and a mythology with one father. That is the absolute magic of this whole paradigm here, is that they've done this to really the window that these people are watching right now. And if these people ever saw the facts and figures, they'd be staggered, because I was driven to to look up these facts and figures. And I am astounded that this system is where it is. No other entity could ever get established or sustained on such failure. This system lives off that failure. It profits by it. The more failure you have, the more perversion it applies, the bigger it gets.
Simon & Schuster has actually censored the portions of my book that dealt with fathers more than anything else. So I had a book that was in process called The 7 Greatest Myths About Men, and 2 of those myths dealt with fathers, and one of those myths was that fathers are as good as, well, the myth was that women are better as mothers than men are as fathers, and I was explaining why that's not true. And they basically censored that chapter, and they censored it, of course, not by saying we censor it, but they said take out all the material, or almost all the material, on divorce.
There's so many people in America today who get all upset if you start talking about the high divorce rate. I mean, they see absolutely nothing wrong with it. They've maybe benefited, and in fact, they're really indignant that you're talking about it. And, the one thing that will bring them around is, you know, if you can show that the children are having problems. And so that has shifted the debate.
The book was given over to a strong feminist editor who had never had children, but at the time she was reading those chapters, she was in labor and with a child that was born out of wedlock, and so she was, and then she convinced other people that you know, that she had this idea, and she got the other people around her to support that, and so that was it led to that being censored.
There is a fringe, especially in the academic world, of feminists, radical feminists or extreme feminists, who still look at the family as something which is expendable, something which is oppressive to women, especially marriage, that it's highly unlikely that marriage could be devised, which would be safe for women. And so there you get a group who kind of favor going their own way without men, and a high percentage of them are becoming lesbian. I don't know high percentage, but I've seen a significant number. So that's sort of the ultimate solution in a way, that then you don't really need men at all. And then they push for raising their own children. There's discussion today that the only really good relationships, equal relationships, are those between 2 women. The danger is the radical feminists who really are, for example, the sort of apoplectic reaction to my book, merely calling attention to the fact that fathers are important, and some people on the extreme left are very upset by that. I mean, they don't want, they think that's an attack on lesbian couples, it's an attack on single mothers, and they kind of want you to believe that any alternative family form is just as good as any other, and I just simply don't believe that for a minute.
They want to have gay marriage made normative, just like other people. And this trivializes and vulgarizes the institution of marriage down to a place where it's meaningless. And that's part of the plan, is to make marriage meaningless. It's an attack on the family.
The image of father has gone from father knows best to father's molest. And so men have been made wrong in almost every sphere. And as women build up that anger toward men, they're more likely to want divorce, to get divorce. And as they get divorce, they're more likely to want to have the option of the children, the option of child support payments, the option of living in the home with the children rather than losing the home and living in an apartment without the children and alone. And so the man ends up paying for being the wallet, and the woman ends up having the home, the children, and because she has the children, she doesn't have the time to earn income herself. And so the man becomes even more of a wallet to supply the income she doesn't have time to earn.
If you owe child support and you're behind in your child support, they now and they passed laws to do this, which are unconstitutional, and we're going to challenge those. They take your driver's license away, freedom of motion, freedom of movement. They take your business and professional license away, your ability to earn a living, and your passport, your ability to travel. All gross violations of the Constitution, yet they do it blatantly, just like that. And you don't hear a huge outcry against it. That's what's scary. You know, I had a chef tell me once, the proper way to cook a lobster is you put it in cold water and then you turn the heat on. And the water starts to heat up and the lobster gets comfortable, and it heats up more and he gets more comfortable. Heats up more and he goes to sleep, and then he gets cooked to death and never even knows what happened to him, okay? And this is what's happening to the American public. The water is getting hotter and hotter and the public's asleep.
The term deadbeat dad is not accurate. It's more like beat dead dads. And after, you know, men have a mechanism called fight or flight, and after you've fought and you've lost your house and your job and your income and supposedly your mate that you loved and your children, there's not much left of you. So I don't blame them for turning tail and running momentarily. But there's too much at risk here, too much at stake for the future of this country and the world as we know it, to let it go. And even though I'm not the man I used to be, and I don't have the aspirations or the goals or the income that I once had, I have a tremendous amount of compassion and love for my daughter, and will do anything to help her or any other children I can at any level.
We've got something so heinous that we've got really fathers, and this is happening more and more, and mothers, picking up guns and killing people, killing their own children because they won't allow custody to the other spouse.
Darrell Holton, a Shelbyville father who police say confessed to killing his 4 young children, is now asking for the public defender's help to fight the charges. Holton made another appearance in a Bedford County courtroom today. Channel 4's Dorinda Carter was there and joins us now live with the latest. Dorinda?
Well, Dan, it was a brief appearance this morning for Darrell Holton, who told a judge he couldn't afford an attorney, but now wants help to fight what could be a death penalty case against him. The overriding question in Shelbyville still is, what kind of person could shoot their own children, stack their bodies on top of each other, and according to family members, believe he did them a favor?
State of Tennessee versus Darrell Keith Holton, charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder of his children.
Darrell Holton wasn't sharing what may have been running through his mind today, 2 weeks after confessing to the murders of his 4 young children.
Yes, sir, I do.
In an orange jail suit and handcuffs, Holton asked for the public defender's help to fight what could be a death penalty case. Police say the Gulf War vet used an assault rifle to shoot 13-year-old Stephen, 10-year-old Brent, 7-year-old Eric, and 4-year-old Kayla.
Shot them, stacked them up, and just covered them up with a tarp. I mean, what could drive a person to do that?
I think in his own mind, he thinks that they're in a better place, but there's no way to understand what went through someone's mind if you can do something that horrible.
A crime so horrible, you can still see the horror in the investigators' eyes. They say they've seen graphic scenes many times before, but nothing like the murders of 4 young children.
That was the most horrendous case I've ever worked. It tore me to pieces.
I haven't seen anything like it since Vietnam. It's bad.
Remember me when I'm not there, 'cause I
still there. It's all we have. Always remember I love you, and I'm still down.